Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be around the world. Welcome to another hosting.com agency success live stream. My name is Nathan Ingram, and I am the agency trainer here at hosting.com. So glad you're along for the ride today as we talk about the content audit. Now, this is the first in, I would imagine, will be a series of several live streams we'll be doing over the next few months about taking parts of the process that you use to create websites for your clients and moving AI into the important parts of that. And this is something I've been working on in my agency for the last 6, 7 months, really since around the holidays last year. I've really been focusing on how can we get out of the chat box with AI and actually start using it to do real work on real files and connecting it out to like Google Workspace and doing things like that to take over parts of our website creation process that we've been doing manually and sort of separated from everything else over the years. Now, that's really the big focus and big takeaway today. Now, content audit is important. We're going to talk about the whys and hows of how an audit ought to be created. But the bigger meta picture is, wow, okay, so if I've got this process that I'm doing every time for my clients as I'm building a new website or redesigning a website, what does it look like if AI takes a significant piece of that workload off my plate? So that's what we're going to talk about today. The process as it should be run, kind of a best practice for a content audit, and then how do we drop AI into the mix and do some really cool things? So really glad you're with us today. If you are just joining us in Zoom, open up the chat and you will find the link to today's handout there. If you're watching this on the replay, you can always access the full library of downloads at downloads.myagencysuccess.com. That's going to open up a big Google Drive folder share, and you have access to all the things that we've been made available throughout all of our agency success live streams. All right, so this is today's handout. It is the content audit, what to keep, kill, and redirect. And let's just talk about why a content audit is important as part of our process. So hopefully, as you're doing work with clients and building websites, managing websites, you're developing processes that you run for every client, every project, every time. And if you do that, you start to get a lot better at what you do because you're following a consistent process that you can then iterate on and make better and learn from your mistakes and so forth. And you just get better over time. So the content audit is a critical piece of this website development process, and it's one of the very first things that we do in a client engagement. Now, a lot of times a rebuild of a website will start with design. Like we start thinking, how can we make this look better? And that's often like it's what we want to do internally. That's what we want to get to. But if we start with design, on either a rebuild or even a new website, we've really gotten the cart before the horse. We've gotten things backwards because we should always start with content first. So before anybody picks a font or redesigns color or anything like that, we need to make some decisions around, what does a new site actually need? And do we already have those pieces in place as far as the content goes? And by content, I mean words, images, media, all those things. Do I really have all that I need, or do some things need to be developed? So this is a guide that's going to walk through that process and just from whether you're doing it manually or with AI, what a good solid content audit process ought to look like. And then at the end, we're going to drop AI into the mix, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's take a look at what a good best practice for a content audit ought to look like. Now, again, our goal here is to either look at an existing site that we're going to be rebuilding and see actually what's there, take inventory of what's actually on the site versus what does the site really need to have to be effective to accomplish the goals that the client lays out. What does it need to be? What does it have? Where is it lacking? What needs to be removed? What needs to be added? All of that is part of this content audit process. So the first step in this process, whether we're going to do it manually or with AI, is to capture what the business is and what they want from their website, right? So what is the goal of this website? It's one of the questions I ask in the intake conversation with the client is, what does success look like? 6 months from now, after we've launched your website, how would you say it's a success? What are the metrics that you have either stated or maybe not stated out loud that would lead you to the opinion that the site was actually successful? So we want to have this conversation. We want to gather everything the client wants to cover with their services, their location, who their ideal client is, what are their goals, what is the one most important action that a visitor should take when they visit their website? Is it call a phone number? Is it click a button, fill out a form? Is it buy a product? What is it that we want our user to actually do? So that's a really good conversation with a client to unpack all of this. Now, pro tip, if you're not doing this already, I would strongly encourage you to record all of these conversations. So whether it's with a meeting recorder in Zoom, or I've gotten now where if I'm in person with someone or talking on the phone, I'll use just a regular sound recorder. Voice memo on my iPhone works really well. And I will upload that to be transcribed. And that's wonderful context for an AI tool to take that transcript and to digest from it what are all these goals and things that a client wants to do. It's a super powerful thing. That's a whole other live stream, actually, but it's important in this step. So we want to meet with a client, unpack what does this site actually need to do and be, and then we're going to look at the old site. But we want to have this conversation about what the site should be before we really dig into what the current site has, because this is a trap that I personally have fallen into, and I've seen others fall into. If we just start with the actual site and try to improve it, kind of start with that as the basis, we really end up missing the mark. We need to start with the vision of what the site needs to be and actually write those things down, figure out what those new goals are before we do anything else. So once we've gotten this step one done in the intake, what the business is and wants, then we go into some competitive research. So my suggestion is pick 3 to 5 competitors. If it's a local service business, it ought to be local competitors. If it's more of a national brand, national competitors. Whoever their top competitors are, most clients can tell you that. That's part of this first conversation you would have. And take a look at their sites and actually visit them. Click through them. How are they organized? What pages are there? Look at it the way a customer would. Read through their structure. Not so much their wording, that's more brand oriented, but what are the pages they actually have? How do they break out the services that they offer? How do they handle trust signals? Like, are they using a lot of reviews, or are there a lot of industry related credentials that they're showing little badges for? How are they guiding a user through that journey of know, like, trust in order to win that customer over? So just kind of view it like you are their customer, and see how those other competitor sites are doing it. Now, in that process, you may notice one of two things. You may notice, wow, these folks are really good and we have a lot of gaps to fill. Or you might say, wow, their competitors aren't really doing any of these standard things like trust signals, or, maybe they have 8 calls to action on their homepage. Those are opportunities for a newly designed competitor site that you're about to build to come and steal some of the business away from a site that maybe hasn't done their homework on what their site is doing. So you might notice opportunities, you might notice gaps that you need to cover on your own site. So from this, we're going to start to sketch out, what does a sitemap look like? So we ought to have, homepage perhaps, and, just some basic ideas of what the services pages kind of ought to look like. So we just start our vision of what this site needs to be. And that can be just as simple as an outline in a Word document, or you can, use some other tool. Now, once we've kind of gotten the concept, we start to use some tools. Now, we need to look now as we're doing this content audit. We've got our goals. Now we actually start doing the auditing work, and we get into the step 3 of inventory. Now, I've set up a simple site here for us to dig into. And it's this this fictitious business called Purple Beagle Heating and Air. So it's a local heating and air contractor. They're going to say here in the Birmingham, Alabama area, where honestly at this moment, heating and air contractors doing pretty well. Um, and it's just a basic site with some basic content, services pages, and so forth. Now, this site needs some help, and it needs a redesign. So this is going to be our target for what we're using this site audit to uncover. Now, what I've given you here in the sheet link here in the handout is a click to copy link um, that will give you this basic overview of what a content audit might look like, right? So there's a tab for what's going on in the existing site. There's a tab on here's some content we might need to create. Here's some redirects that we need to create. You know, if we're changing pages or getting rid of them and handling the redirects. And then, what is the sitemap? Our vision for a sitemap for what the site ought to be. Now, here is an example completed version of one of these. Okay, so look at this real quick. So right here, this is our first existing content tab. It's where we would start here with a blank slate and we fill in, the URL, what's the page title? Is it a page, a post, some sort of custom post type? Are we going to keep it, remove it, consolidate it with another page, or just update the content on that page? And we're going to work through this process until we've got everything mapped out. Now, here's a question for you. This site has right here 43 pages, excluding the header column or header row, and then another however many posts this is, 25 posts or so. How long would it take you, if you were doing this manually and looking at a site, how long would it take you to fill out a sheet like this to get a sense of what's actually on your site and what you're going to do with the content that's there? Just a guess. Drop that in the chat. A long time. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, a few hours probably. Yeah, it's a while. Okay, so our process for doing this, it depending on the size of the site, obviously, this was a half a day job. This was I'm going to the coffee shop. I'm going to put on some headphones. I'm going to digest the current site content. And I would, try to come up with this sheet, right? Of what is the URL? What's the page title? What's the, if it's going to be removed or consolidated, what's the new URL it's connected with? And then what any notes that I see about this content. It would be one at a time viewing. Now, there's a wonderful plugin that can help you with this, by the way. If you are averse to AI, a great plugin to help you along this process is one called Export All URLs by Atlas Gondal. And the link to it is right here. This is the plugin I used for years to start to create this very sheet. All right. So this Export All URLs, it's under Tools. And we can say, all right, what do I want? And I would do the post type separately just to control what was there. So I would do pages. What do I want? I want the title and the URL. I really don't care about any of this stuff. I want things that are published. And so here we could also say just published within a date range or whatever. I want to put this in a CSV. So I'm going to hit export. And that gives me a link to download. So there goes my file. And here is the URL download that it gave me. So right here, I've got title and URL. That's awesome. Oh, there's one little piece of this I forgot to do, and it's under advanced. And I want to exclude the domain URL. So we just get the slash. So let me re-export this and re-download this because this is how I used to do it. Right here, and if we would go here to our content audit URL and title, that's what we have here. Let's invert those just for the sake of order. Come on now. Why won't you move? All right. I would just copy these down my list. This is not fun at all, right? And I would say this is a page, and then I would fill that for all of my pages. Right? So that's way better than doing it by hand, but still, this is no fun. And I would go through and decide, okay, are we going to keep this sample page? Nope, that needs to get removed, right? So this was a long process. And you go through and you kind of get into a Zen state when you're doing it, like get in this groove where you're focused in on what does the site need and what do we do with this content. But it's going to take forever, especially depending on the size of the site, right? Does anybody actually enjoy this kind of work? Probably not. It's just not a ton of fun. So this was the way we would do it. We'd do it for every single post type, every every post on the site, maybe even adding a category column for posts, that sort of thing. So this is not great, but it was necessary because we would look at this and say, all right, we're going to get a full view of what's on the site. And when we rebuild it, we don't want to have any 404 errors. We don't want, we want to have a really good content architecture strategy going forward. So it was just part of the deal. I accept it. It's going to take forever. I do certainly come away from that time at the coffee shop with a big understanding of what I want the site to be. It's in my head now, but my goodness, half a day typically to really think through architecture, to do competitive research, and to do all those things that we need it to do. So not really just not a lot of fun. Now, the Google Sheet does help though. And if you click this, you do have to have a Google account. It's a click to copy link, but that will give you your own copy of this sheet, which we're going to use whether you do a version of this or not. So go ahead and get your copy of that and save it off to your Google Drive. Now, the step 4 is taking a look at all these things that we just did and making that decision of whether I'm going to consolidate it, keep it, remove it, or update it. Every single item on the list. Now, I keep it. Hey, look, it fits a slot in my perfect content architecture plan. It's the home page, or it's the about page, or the contact page. We're going to keep those, right? So it fits a slot. It's good as is, doesn't need any copywriting update or anything. Or maybe it's an update option, which is, look, it fits a slot, but the content is thin or it's dated, but I want to keep the URL. I just want to fix the content. So that would give that an update flag. Now, it could be that we have some content that overlaps. Like, for example, if we look at this full audit of this Purple Beagle site, what we would notice is, wow, we have an AC repair, air conditioning repair page, but there's also another one that is, let's see, that is called services AC repair down here. So this is the typical kind of thing that you would find on a site that's been around forever. Look, there's content that is like, there's these old promo offers that are just lingering around from summer 2001. There's just a bunch of stuff lingering here. 2020 HVAC trends to watch. That sounds like a must-read blog post, right? Anyway, here's an old COVID warning, right? From back in the day. So this is typical of a site that's been around forever, and it's just going to need some updating on the content. So we go through and we work our way down. Are we going to keep it updated, consolidate 2 similar pages into one really strong page, pick that URL, and then redirect back to the one that we pick? Or look, if it just doesn't serve a purpose at all, we're going to just let it go. It could be that, there's just some stuff here that we don't need anymore. For example, there's a, where is the, I think it's, yeah. So down here is an old page, like maybe one day back in the day, Purple Beagle Heating and Air used to install pool heaters I don't know why, but they're not doing that anymore. But like a lot of sites, that page is, maybe they removed it from the main navigation, but the page is still out there and published and in the sitemap and maybe indexed by Google and so forth. So, those are things that, we're probably going to want to remove that one, right? So we go through and we work our way down this content audit, one thing at a time, making our decision of what we're going to do with each piece of content. Now, one little tip here is to make a note about why you made each call, right? So if we look at, okay, this was a 2019 event for an out of the city footprint. We're just going to let that go to a 404. It's probably not indexed and getting traffic anyway. It doesn't really matter. So just make that little note as you're going through the audit so that future you remembers why you made that call. I keep these content audit spreadsheets. They just live in the project folder for the client. I could go back to 5 years ago and find a spreadsheet similar to this that, where I made decisions, and I could go back and remember why I did something. All right. So just a couple of other little notes here. If you're going to remove a page, redirect it to the closest relevant page. And I did a bunch of research again around latest trends around 301 redirects here, because a redirect is what Google wants us to do if you've updated a content to something else. And today, there used to be a rule that you'd lose 15% of your placement if you did a redirect, and that's just not the case anymore. That's been confirmed through Google and multiple people who've done research around this, including John Mueller from Google and others who are saying, look, it passes all of its equity to the new page as long as the other page is similar. And that's really the key. So a lot of times what you may have done in the past is, oh, we dropped this service. Let's just redirect that back to the homepage. Google says that it's worthless. They call it a soft 404. So if the content was there and you're redirecting it on the new site to content that's not similar at all, it's really, Google's treating it like it was a soft 404. So what you might do is create what I call a graveyard page, which is not a 404 error, but it's a page that said, hey, we used to offer this service along with some others. Just have a single graveyard page where you're redirecting some, extinct content to, just to let people know. And that's better, I think, than a soft 404, but still, it's not going to help you a lot. But you don't want to be ranked for those terms anyway. So those are some things we need to think about as we are going through this one at a time audit of what needs to happen on every page. Okay, so now we've created our ideal sitemap, right? So I'll go back to my sample document here, and here's kind of the first shot at an ideal sitemap in this tab, where here's our page title, here's some URLs and so forth. And so what's missing, right? What are the gaps? So as I've looked at competitive research and decided, oh, they have, for example, pages for every single suburban area in Birmingham. So it's like heating and air in Hoover, Alabama, or in Homewood, Alabama, or whatever, the different metropolitan suburban areas around the city. There's location pages. We don't have any of those, and so that's an opportunity. What else is missing in my, I should create it. So all that goes here in this create tab. And I've just got some examples here of, here's some locations pages we might want to create. Here's some, maintenance plans. Every competitor offers recurring maintenance membership. That's interesting. Financing. HVAC is a high ticket item. We should offer some financing options. We're not talking about that on our site right now. Or here's an FAQ page. We don't have an FAQ page on this site. We probably should. So those are just some things that we might have noticed by hand as we're looking at all these competitors and just jotting some notes. So these are some things we need to create and figuring out the gaps of what's missing. Now, the fun part here is once we decide what we go through, we build what's our final sitemap going to look like after all of this and thinking about what's going to go where, we solidify that, and then we create our list of redirects. Now, if you are using the Google Sheet that I've provided you, this is actually a really gnarly formula, and anything that's on this, here we go. Anything that's on this existing tab that's marked as remove or consolidate, and it's got a destination URL, That's automatically being listed here for you. So as you go through the process and you're creating your list of existing pages and you flip something to consolidate with a new URL or redirect with a new URL, that's what's showing up here automatically on this redirect tab. And the neat thing here is you can just export that as its own little CSV and upload it into redirection and you're done. That's pretty handy. So this sheet is your buddy when you're starting to do a content audit. Now that is the very quick 20-minute walkthrough of what a content audit by hand looks like. So I'm going to pause just for a minute. Does all this make sense? Or is there anything about this that maybe you're not doing already that would be helpful to start doing as you're doing a content audit, or anything that didn't make sense up to this point? Just drop that question in the chat and I'll address that. And then we will drop in some AI to this process and have some fun. So Billy says, so you're working with your rough sitemap from the previous step. Yes. So that's what goes here on this sitemap page. As I've started to think through, what does this new perfect sitemap look like? All right. Sean says the last company I was with didn't have a process this good. So here's the thing. People don't usually like this content architecture phase is, I mean, I'm going to say the most boring part of the whole web design process to me. I love the development. I love the design. I mean, it's just not fun. It is, but it's absolutely necessary. Because how do you know what you're building until you create a plan to decide what you're building, right? So awesome. Is everybody good on this? Are you ready for AI goodness and fun? Because now this is where the action starts. Okay. So, and let me just pause before I get into this AI and the AI piece. Why not just jump right into AI and go into Claude and say, do a content audit of such and such site? You know, if you did that, you might get some interesting results. You really might. But every time you do that for every other site, it's going to be a little bit different. The output's going to be different. Not just this, I mean, every site's going to have different suggestions for their audit, obviously. But the way it gives you the information, and maybe it leaves some out one time and then adds some things the next time, right? So it's generative AI, these tools. They're generating something fresh every time. And so without the next step I'm about to give you, you're going to get a wide variety of output from your AI tool every time you say, go do a content audit of whatever, because you haven't defined what content audit means to you and to your agency. And this is the key, y'all, because if you hand your AI tool, a file-aware AI tool like Claude Code or ChatGPT's Codex, this will work in either one of those. If you hand it a process in a markdown file with a step-by-step run that it needs to do to give you the exact output that you want, now what you can do is take all those process documents that you have, hopefully that you've built over the years doing all the things you do with web design. You can take those and they become your instruction list for your AI tool. And now every part of your process starts to become consistent again, even though it's generative AI. Does that make sense? And what happens if we start doing this not only for our content audit process, but for every process in the agency? That's where things start to absolutely explode in a good way. It gets to be a lot of fun. Okay, so and Phoebe has said, you need a better prompt than do a content audit, I think. Yeah, absolutely, right? That's just the lightest possible prompt. And really, this markdown document that I'm giving you as part of this document here is like a gigantic, very detailed prompt. But you can drop it into a conversation and let it run. And it's going to do that, follow that process every single time. Okay, so let's move on down here to inviting AI into the process. Now, I've given you a link right here. This is going to download a content audit process. It's a markdown file that looks similar to this. It's just a bunch of text It's going to download to your wherever your downloads go. You can open it up and read it. It's just it's like a gigantic prompt that's a step-by-step outline of how you want this content process to go. Now, you might say, well, what's the difference in just pasting that into a chat? You can do that. But there's another level you get to when you start using a file-aware AI tool like Claude Code, like ChatGPT Codex, and you do it the way I'm about to show you. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over this folder to the desktop. So this is my Purple Beagle audit, and in it is this content audit process that I just gave to you. It's what you download right here. Now, just full disclosure, mine's a little bit different because for this live stream, I've told it to pause after each step so that we can look at what it did before it does the next thing, or really, quite frankly, look at what it just did as it's doing the next step so we don't sit here and wait on it forever. Yes, this is a download. So if you click on that, it's going to download a file to wherever your downloads go. So it is a markdown file, but it's this one right here. Content audit process. All right. Now, the markdown file I've given you is not going to pause after every step because you're just going to want it to run. So let's see what's going on here. Let me pull over Claude real quick. I'm going to pull away a couple of these windows. We'll leave our guide. Okay. Now, I've started a new conversation with Claude, and I wanted to get this up and running just so that there was no issue starting this session. Now, here's what I did. So I started a new session, and I selected this folder as the working directory. Okay, that's all I've done. And I've given it the sample prompt that I've given you right here. Okay, so I've simply gotten to this point. Create a folder on your desktop or wherever for the audit, drop that MD file into it, open your AI buddy, point it at that folder where you can attach a folder to the conversation, and then run a prompt. That's where we are right here. Okay. So okay, I'm going to start by reading the process and seeing what's going on. So it lists the files in the folder. I see the process file. So it reads the process file in its entirety. And hey, this is an existing WordPress site. So I'll run steps 0 through 8 in order, writing each output to the folder. Now that's where this is the big next step here. If you're just using your AI tool in the chat, then you're not able to get the folder writing output that this will give you. So, and if you missed it, we did a live stream on this earlier this month called Beyond the Chatbot. It's in our YouTube channel. If you missed that, make sure you watch that because it's really the understanding of why it's better to use AI this way to actually write files to a folder. So that's what we're doing here. This is a great example of a folder and file-aware AI process. So we've got a folder, we've got our process document in it, and it has now, okay, let me start with step 0, create the run log. Now, this is what I like to do when I'm working in ChatGPT, or pardon me, with Claude like this. I'm going to click the kebab menu here and click Files, and here's all the files that are running in this session. So it sees my content audit document. Awesome. But now it has written all by itself. This is the first instruction in the content log. It's written this run log. And look, okay, it has the steps listed one at a time. Now, these are the exact steps that we just talked about as part of our process. So we're going to do an intake interview. We're going to do some competitive research. We're going to run an inventory of the existing site. We're going to audit the pages and posts. We're going to find the gaps. We are going to do a redirect list, a final sitemap, and then if we have a Google Sheet connector, it's going to work. Okay, so we have added our folder. We have entered our sample prompt, and we are now in the process. Now, if you're running this, it's just going to zip through. It's not going to stop at every step like mine is doing because I'm doing this for demo purposes. All right. Couple of questions in the chat. Karen says, I missed the part where we change the URL in the MD file. You don't have to do that. That's in the prompt right here. So we're supplying the URL in the prompt. It's this prompt that you copy It's not a magic prompt. You can say pretty much anything you want, but this is what you want to include in your prompt. And you just give it the URL you want it to look at and a one-line descriptor of the business. In this case, it's an HVAC service in the greater Birmingham area. Got it? Okay. Phoebe says, Chad is telling me the run book asks me to pause before competitive analysis so you can confirm the competitor set. Interesting. Okay. Okay. So let's keep going. All right. Do you want me to keep going? Step 1? Yes. So here we go. So step 1 over here is the intake interview. Let's research the site. It's an existing site. And now look, it is using the WordPress REST API to pull all the things about this site. Oh, shoot. And this is where it's important to give it the right URL because I gave it purplebeagle.com and that's not the correct domain. Okay. Oops, should be purplebeagle.org. All right. So, give it the right URL. Okay, so now it should pull all the things. Boom. So it's thinking. Real site confirmed. Yay. Oh, look, it's a cadence theme. It can tell that from some of the things it found. A REST API is live. So now we're looking at the pages on the site. This is so cool. It's going to pull all of the pages. Take just a little bit. All right, got what I needed for the brief. So what has it done? At this point, it has created, or it's writing a brief right now based on all the things. Look, 15 years, who they serve, service area, key staff members. So it's gotten all this from just pulling the REST via the REST API, the pages on the public site. So now it is writing the site brief. All right, so right there is our new file that just appeared, our site brief. So 2 quick things. Is Tuscaloosa active area? So Tuscaloosa is a little town where the University of Alabama is, about an hour away. We used to serve them at Purple Beagle, but now we no longer serve Tuscaloosa. All right. Single most important call to action is phone. So based on that, it's going to move now into competitive research. Okay, so it's now updating the site brief with that information. You can even look at it if you want. Okay, it's thinking about that. It wrote some things. Look, it even updated the run log. Now step 1 is complete. Isn't that cool? So our site brief is now up to date about who they are, what we're doing. The existing location page are now out of the area. Remove candidates in the audit. Awesome. Okay, so now we're ready for competitive research? Yes. So let's let that run and we'll keep looking at our site brief. So here are our primary services that we offer. Yep. Our conversion goal is the phone call. Excellent. Trust signals that it observed, 15 years, 80 reviews, NATE certified techs, upfront flat pricing. Okay, now in the meantime, it's come back. It's just gone out and it's researched what are some HVAC companies in Birmingham. All right, so here are 4 options. That's good. Let's go with those. Now it's going to go out and do a little dive on each one of those sites. And it's fetching them in parallel. Isn't that cool? So we're listening to top level nav items, submenu services, products. How do they handle trust proof? All those things that we need to be thinking about. Oh, I did this one in the test. They've got bots blocked. So Standard Heating and Air does not want us digesting their website. That's a shame. But these 3, I think, do work. So we got Douglas Cooling. No, that one's also having a problem. Let's see. Still blocking fetch. So we have 2. Let's see what. Now, what you can tell this if you want to open up a tab in Chrome if you have the Claude Chrome extension, but let's just see what it can do this way. Because probably what it's going to do is say, okay, they got all 4. Excellent. So it went around. Oh, they did a page structure via search. So that's good. It found that like that's not in the run book. It just figured out that might be a good next step. Billy, that's a great question. So is the transcript of the interview with the client included in Site 1? Yeah, you could drop that in that original prompt and just say, here's a transcript of my conversation with the client, and just let that be part of that first prompt. And that'll give it a lot more context and answer some of those questions that it went ahead and asked me, like, what are their services, or, what the primary call to action is, that sort of thing. All right, so structure notes are good. All right, are we ready to go to step 3 and pull the inventory, the full URL list from the WordPress REST API? Now, this is the part that we would have had to do with the export all URLs plugin, but because the REST API is live, we can just go pull that data live. Now, let's take a quick look right here. Now we have competitive research showing up. So this is what it just did. And it's given us competitive research on all of these competitors. There's top level nav structure, category hubs, location strategy, interesting, service area city. Look at that. So it shows their whole URL structure. They've got trust proof, conversion path, resources, no blog. That's interesting, right? And here's Gwen service. Long established. Then there's their top level structure, services, location strategy, trust proof, Brown Heating and Air, 60 years. That's a long time. All their structure and so forth. This is really interesting stuff. This would have taken how long? This is a morning of me sitting at the coffee shop. And then Douglas. All right. So in the meantime, over here, what's going on? We are pulling, look, our post types, posts and pages, good data, excellent, 23 posts, excellent, some pages. So now we're looking at all of our pages. So it's able to do this publicly unless you've turned off the REST API on your WordPress site for some reason. Okay, 57 pages. So something happened and it's trying to fix itself. All right, so here's, as this is finishing. All right, it's still going back. It's self-correcting, which is awesome. Here's the synthesis of our competitive review. The table stakes. This is what the rebuild needs. Home, services hub, 1 page per core service, about, a review testimonial page, a financing page, a service area page, contact, and specials and offers. Now look at what it's just done. Because we went through this process, it knows about our site and it's comparing it against the competitor site. So look, Purple Beagle currently has none. That's a great takeaway. Contact. We don't have any coupons showing. So here's some opportunities. Maintenance and membership plan, evergreen financing plan, service area suburb pages, FAQ help pages, brands we install page, structure norms for the industry. So what do other HVAC sites do structurally? They nav organized by service category, dedicated services area section, standalone about reviews, all those pages, phone number persistent in the header, trust blocks everywhere. Really good stuff. Okay, so here we go. I think, okay, we're finally writing the CSV here. That's awesome. So what this is doing is it's building out our CSV. Now, all of these files live, this matches, it'll show up inventory here in just a minute, but it's writing all these files here in that folder. So when you're done, you've got a folder full of files that you can right away start to work with. So let's take a look. Okay, our inventory CSV is showing up now. That's fantastic. It's editing. It fixed something. Okay. So step 3 is done. Awesome. We've got our inventory. Fantastic. This is what's actually on the site. We're ready to go to step 4? Yep. Let's go to step 4. So this is going to audit every one of these pages in the inventory and assign those decisions. Are we going to keep it, replace it, consolidate it, etc.? So it's going to go through and think about that. Now that's going to take a minute. Now, while that's doing that, how long have we been running here? About, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, maybe less. And literally, this could be running in the background while you're doing other things. That's the amazing thing about this is if you move your processes from your agency into something like this competitive analysis markdown file, wow, you can just run this on another screen while you're working on something else. All right, so I've heard this before. Claude has been almost done thinking for me for like 30 minutes one time. Okay, Paul has a great question in the meantime. How did you select the folder on the desktop? Okay, so that, let me drag this over here and see if that's going to reveal anything I don't want to reveal. Just a second. So right here, when you start a new session in Claude Code, you just click this folder that's right beside local, and it's going to pop up a list of options if you have done some other things, but just do open folder. Now this is Claude Code, and it would show up. You just select a folder right here. Ben, can you do the same process with a file in GitHub? Absolutely. All of your processes can live in GitHub. And if you're attached to that repo, then it can just pull the process right from there. How long, Stacy, I assume what you're asking is how long did it take me to write the contents of the markdown file? You think I wrote that stuff? I didn't sit there writing. Claude does that, right? So the first step of this whole process was me working with Claude a long time ago to this is a piece of our process. Okay, how do we do our content processing with Claude? And I gave it our written process, the way we've done it, our checklist of the way we've done it for years. And then it generated the first version of the thing that I just gave to you. And then you run it and you iterate on it. And if something doesn't act like you want it to act, you have it update the process document to do things a little bit differently. Does that make sense? In no way did I sit there and write all of this out. You let Claude write your processes for you based on your goals and input and maybe some existing material that you already have. Okay, let's see where we are. All right, we've done everything. We have look at that. We've gone through all of our decisions. That's superb. We've done, let's see, key judgment calls of what to keep, consolidate, remove. All right, do I want to go through find the gaps? Yes, let's do that. And then we will look at what it actually did here. So believe that's now going to be an inventory. Yes. Okay, so now we have the full inventory of page, the last modified, the flags, and so forth. That's pretty cool. All right, here in existing is what it just worked on. I wish maybe I can make this. Yeah, here we go. We'll make this a little bit bigger. So this matches our spreadsheet. Well, here's our URL, our title, what type is the page or a post. What am I going to do? Update it, consolidate, update, whatever. If it's a consolidate decision, here's the new URL. So we're redirecting our mission to about, and then some notes on why it made that decision are all there. So that's super cool. All right, so it's doing a bunch of stuff over here. What did we do? Okay, 67 URLs. Okay, we've updated the run log, decision tally. Here's all of our updates. We're ready to create our gap CSV. It's done and written, so let's take a look at that. And in the meantime, am I ready for the bulk redirect list? Yes. So we'll let that run. Here's what it just created in redirect, or pardon me, up here in create.csv. So these are the resources on the site we need to create. So the financing page, why, and the notes. Oh, look, redirect targeted for the retired summer page. That's a good idea. So we'll take that old offer and redirect it to now our evergreen financing page. Pretty cool. All right, so it's got a pretty good sheet full of things here. And again, we don't have to view it here. These files all live over here in this folder. It's just dropping them in. All right. Are we ready to build the final sitemap? Yes. So this is going to be based on everything that's there that we've kept or consolidated, all the gaps that we've identified. It's now building our finalized sitemap. Isn't that exciting? If you have a question in the meantime, just drop it in the chat and I will do my best to answer it while we're watching Claude do its thing. So we're going to complete here in about 30 minutes, maybe less actually, if I wasn't explaining it, we just let it run. Complete about 30 minutes of it would in 30 minutes we would complete work that would have taken me a morning at a coffee shop. Now I can just go to the coffee shop and enjoy a good cup of coffee and read something. And all this work can happen on another screen while I'm doing other things. Pretty amazing. All right, so sitemap is ready. So here's our sitemap written out. That looks pretty clean. Look at that. Nice menu silos, service areas. Interesting. All right, so that's all written out and it's ready for us. Now, I'm going to pause right here just for a second. And let's talk about the Google Sheet. So back to, I have too many windows open. All right. So here is our Google Sheet. And one thing you can note is that I made the output of these CSV files to match the tab names down here. So it's really easy to transfer these over. So let's go to existing. And here's our doc. Now you may note that I'm demonstrating this in a very clunky fashion. It's about to get cooler. So you can take from the CSV and then just paste it right here and it fills everything in. Just make your columns size. Okay, so this is ready to go. Look at that. And from this, it built our redirects for us, right? Because we just pasted that in. Same is true on our pages to create. Here's our CSV. You can drop those in. They'll just fit. They're the same column. You can just paste it right in. Now, what I want to show you, though, is one more little step. I mean, who wants to copy and paste? That's so 2024. The next step here, which Claude asked, and it's part of this process, is, hey, would you like to publish this to a Google Sheet? And if you're actually reading through the process markdown, you'll notice that it's going to go look and see if you might have a Google Sheets connector set up. Now, to actually have this work, you have to create what's called an MCP for Google Workspace. Now, this is next level, okay? I'm going to put this out there because those of you that are experimenting already with Claude Code, it's likely you might have built an MCP before. And it's really not that hard once you see how it works. And you can just ask Claude to help you do this. So adding a Google Workspace MCP is a significant power up to this process because what Claude can do is just write that sheet for you. You don't even need those local files if you don't want them. You can just push it right out to the Google Sheet. So it's a separate piece of work from this content audit. And this is part of, if you're going to bring in file-aware AI tools it will help you to understand what MCP servers are. Now, lucky for you, in just a couple of weeks, we're going to have a live stream about the new Rocket.net MCP. And I'm going to show you how to create an MCP and add it to your Claude or Codex tool. Now, if you're already doing that, or if you want to experiment, all you do is you can tell Claude, hey, I want to use this MCP and connect my Google Workspace. Now, you need to be in Claude Code to do this, but it will step you through this whole process. Now, this process does involve going into the Google Cloud Console and creating a cloud project. You may have done that before if you have built like Google Map integration and you had to go out there and, set up a Google Cloud project and bring the credentials back in. That's the same process here. Now, if what I'm just describing to you is it's no problem. That's why you have the local files right here, and you can just pick these up and use them as is. They're everything you need. You can just paste them right into the Google Sheet. But if you want to take this to the next level and experiment just a little bit with Claude, build this MCP server, and it'll take you through the whole process. You can just let it step you through it, and it will let you authenticate with Google, just with a browser tab, and you give it access, and boom, it's set up and working. That's a one-time process that once you build that MCP server for your Google Workspace, it's now there, and Claude just knows it's there. And this is something I was talking to my AI mastermind about last week, of layering tools. What happens is I start bringing in more tools that Claude has access to. We have probably a dozen tools now that Claude is aware of. And now so much of these processes, we have to go out to this place or that place or whatever, it's just now all accessible right from within Claude. And as we build these layers, now Claude can do amazing things following our process. So let's say, yes, let's publish to a Google Sheet and see what it's going to do. Because it is now going in the process document. If you read it, if you actually open it and read it, it references the Google Sheet URL that I've given you in the handout. And it is now, look, it is going to copy that file. Yes, I want to allow that. So it's making a copy of that sheet that we've been working from, this one right here. And it is now going to edit the tabs and drop in information. So it's going to ask, but we're going to let it do what it wants to do here. So we're going to write our content there. Now I've got to go find the actual sheet that it just created. Here it is. All right, it is now writing all these values that it's pulled into CSV files up to the Google Sheet. And they just appeared. So this is a new document right here that it is now filling in with all of our data. And we'll watch this. And it's about to add in the create information. Boom, there it goes. And it's about to add in, there's the redirects and our sitemap. There it is. So it just pushed everything right up to that Google Sheet, and we're done. Now, how amazing is that? So we look at our run log. We've stepped through all of our processes here. It's made some notes along the way. Now, what do? We take this plan and we sit down with our client. And if we have anything that we need to ask about, we can ask about it. We have a real Google Sheet we can work with. And then when it's done, this is what's cool. If you have an MCP for WordPress like Novamira, because these redirects are already in the Google Sheet, you can just tell Novamira, hey, pull those redirects out of the sheet and stick them in the redirection plugin. And it just does it. You don't even have to do anything. It's absolutely amazing. All right, that, folks, is the process of the content audit. I've given you some resources and links here to follow all the prompts. You should need to do that. And of course, if you are considering an upgrade to hosting.com, I invite you to have a chat with Mike Demo. Mike is an expert when it comes to agencies and hosting. Mike still does client work himself and ran an agency for many years. And he understands what we need and will help to fit you with the right flavor of hosting.com, whether it's a virtual dedicated server, virtual private server, or our managed WordPress hosting by rocket.net. Mike will talk you through all those options and help you find the best fit for you. And we'd love to have you as part of the hosting.com family. I personally made a decision to put my agency on hosting.com hosting before I even started working with hosting.com. I've been a customer for years, since back when it was A2 hosting. So I highly recommend the platform, and we use it for our day-to-day work still today. All right. Now, let's take a look at some questions. If you have questions, drop them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. Okay, Stacy, the Google Sheet is instead of having the files on the computer. Yeah, I just like Google Sheets better for a number of reasons, but also it's shareable. We have access, organization-wide to Sheets. It's in the cloud, so Claude can pull data from it if it needs to. It's just better for me than a local file. But you could that's the thing. Now that if you're using FileAware AI, you can absolutely just run it from the individual CSVs that you have right there. Stacy says she has a project she can try this with. Awesome. How many tokens does this process eat? I don't know that you can answer that because every project is going to be a little different depending on how much content is there, how much, how deep the competitive research gets, that sort of thing. Let me see if there's a way I can see. I've never actually looked at this. Is there a way I can tell in this conversation how many tokens it consumed? I don't know the answer to that question, but I will tell you this. A couple months ago, I bumped up to the Claude $100 a month plan and haven't looked back. I mean, look, this is one snippet of the way that I use Claude all day long. And I want it running in Opus because it's significantly better. And we've got processes on top of processes now built into Claude for our agency. And it just runs all the time. That's the best $100 I spend every month. It's just worth it. I don't know. Let's see. How many tokens did this work consume in this session? Total. I don't know if it's going to know that answer. Maybe it will. Yeah, I didn't think so. Well, it did just consume 200 tokens to answer that question. Oh, cost. Let's see if that works here. Usage. This session, there you go. A lot. But you're not, here's the thing. You're paying for usage in a block of time, right? The actual tokens, unless you're buying tokens retail on the API. Yeah. Yeah. And look, the 5-hour limit just kind of started over when we did, when the webinar started. So it consumed about 6% of my resources for this block of hours. But again, totally worth it. Is it worth it and now it saved me half a day of work? I would say absolutely so. Let me drop in our link bundle and invite you to make sure you have signed up for all of our next and upcoming live streams here at hosting.com. We do have several. We are on July the 7th is the live stream I was talking about just earlier, where we're going to look at MCP and rocket.net. Rocket.net has a beautiful MCP, incredibly capable, that will let you connect your Claude right to their whole platform. And that includes your website, all the hosting infrastructure, your database, everything. You can talk to the entire infrastructure from this MCP. So we're going to do some pretty neat stuff with that. And that's a great one, even if you're not hosting on rocket.net yet. It's a great way to see the incredible power that comes when you have an MCP connected to your hosting and your website. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me for the last hour. Hope this has been fun. Hopefully, you are ready to tackle a project like this using your own file-aware AI. Any lingering questions that come up as you run these things, of course, that's what office hours is for. So I'll see you on Thursday, this same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, for office hours on Thursday. Until then, have a great week, and I will see you then on Hosting.com's Agency Success, where we go further together.